This is for the Identities Abroad South Africa program for this December, focused on race, ethnicity, and housing. And why don't you go to the next slide? We'll just do quick introductions. My name is Scott Ozorowski. I work in the Study Abroad office, and I help with some of the logistics of planning all of the Study Abroad programs behind the scenes. And I'm helping work on the logistics of this program for December coming up.
Okay, and I'm Professor Valerie Johnson, Associate Professor in Political Science and Endowed Professor of Urban Diplomacy, and I am the Faculty Program Director.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Great. So before I'm gonna let Professor Johnson kind of take it away, but just a quick little overview here. This program is the first in our series of what we're calling Identities Abroad programs, which are programs that are tied to the LSP 200 class. That's the Seminar on Race, Power, and Resistance. Used to be called the Seminar on Multiculturalism in the US. So it's an LSP requirement that most students have. If you have not yet taken LSP 200, you'll get credit for it for doing this program. If you have taken LSP 200 before, that's okay. You can still do it. We'll register you in a different section of the class instead, and you'll actually get credit for your experiential learning EL requirement. So that's kind of the way it works. But these Identities Abroad programs are a new series of programs that our office had started back in 2020. We had the first two programs ready to go, and then COVID hit and we had to cancel them. And this is the first time since COVID has started that we've been back on track to get them going. And so this is the first one of this series, and they're designed specifically to tackle topics related to identity. And they're open to any student, but particularly hoping to focus on students that are students of color, first generation students, students with high financial need, where these issues really resonate. And for any other students who these issues really resonate for as well. And we have some additional scholarship funding for students that we're going to talk about kind of later in here. Lucy, I see your question. Could it count as elective credit? Absolutely. If you already have fulfilled those, it can be just credits that go towards your elective credit. So yeah. So Professor Johnson, why don't you take it away and talk about the course and the experience in South Africa?
Okay, I am really psyched about teaching this course. As was mentioned, we were all ready to go in the spring of 2020, and then COVID hit. And so you all will be the inaugural group for this class, and I promise you that it will be exciting. I actually returned on last Tuesday from Johannesburg. So I've been back in the country for a week. I've gotten over my jet lag, and I'm just so excited to see you all. Let me tell you a little bit about the course. The course is entitled A Seminar on Race, Power, and Resistance, but my subtitle for the course is US and South African Apartheid. I know that for some of you, you might find that a little confusing. You know, generally when we speak about residential segregation in the US, we don't refer to it as apartheid, but they are one and the same. Anytime society separates population based on race and ethnicity, that is a sort of apartheid, because apartheid simply means separateness, okay? And so when you look at the consequences, I think when people think of residential segregation, they think that people determine where they will live by, you know, particular choices. In some instances, that is the case. But when you look at the history of residential segregation in both South Africa and in the United States, there's more than meets the eye. But what can be said unequivocally is where you live determines a lot about the opportunities as well as societal resources that you can access. Now, this class will be taught in fall of 2022, and it will be taught on Tuesday evenings, 6 to 9:15. So that means that we will have 10 meetings in addition to some pre-travel activities. The course is a 4 credit hour course, as our other LSP 200 courses, but it also has a 2 credit hour component. That is the actual travel or study course. That will take place during the December intersession. Now, here are
And
some.
let me just kind of interrupt for a second on that. So for
Okay.
that 2 credit course, that doesn't have like class meetings and times. That's basically your experience while you're abroad. So there are going to be assignments and participation for your time while you're in South Africa. And that's what this is, the 2 credits.
Right, exactly. And so together though, my phone is dinging. I'm trying to silence it here. Okay, so together though, the 2 courses together are 6 credit hours. I want to go over some central questions of the course just to ensure that you understand all that the course covers. And I'm doing this in questions. So these can be rhetorical, and maybe we could unpackage them a little bit more during the question and answer period. But the 3 central questions are: what factors determine access to societal resources, such as quality educational opportunities, healthcare, employment, proximity to crime, environmental hazards, and the development of mainstream cultural competencies? Of course, one of the main factors is, of course, where you live, right? Where you live is so consequential. So as mentioned, it is more than about choice. Sometimes it is about historical and continuing factors that impact where you live. Another question is, how is it that after the civil rights movement and the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, that grave inequality still exists between whites and people of color in America, as well as in South Africa? A third question that we will grapple with in the course is, how do we address and resolve socioeconomic inequalities resulting from residential segregation in America and apartheid in South Africa? We have several course objectives. We want to apply a global lens to the problems impacting the life chances of racial and ethnic groups and minorities in the US and South Africa. I think oftentimes we think of the US situation or the South Africa situation as anomalies or outliers, but you will see through a comparison that they are much of the same. Another objective is to demonstrate a deeper understanding of the root causes of racial and ethnic inequality and inequities in the US and South Africa. Often when we talk about racial and ethnic inequality and inequities, we think of, in America, we are fond of talking about meritocracy. And so where you are in society is often thought of as based on merit, but it can certainly be rooted in racial and ethnic inequality, public policies, and practices. Another course objective is to explain the mitigating effects of government policy. What happens when governments change policies and practices, and how does that impact racial and ethnic inequality and any inequities? Another objective is to compare social justice and reconciliation challenges and successes in South Africa and the USA. What have we done to try to resolve the problem of racial inequities that are rooted in residential segregation and other racist policies and practices? Yet another objective is to analyze contemporary social problems and public policies on the basis of historical events. Okay, in other words, what sort of social problems have arisen from these public policies and historical events? And finally, to draw comparisons between problems impacting minority groups in the US and South Africa. Very central to this course is a study of contrast. On the left of the screen, you see a photograph of the river in Chicago, and a photograph is juxtaposed against a photo of a Southside community. We know that of the top countries with the widest wealth gap, the United States is number 9. And much of that wealth gap is rooted in race and ethnicity. On the right, we see a juxtaposition of downtown Cape Town. Actually, when I was in Cape Town, South Africa, a couple of years ago in 2019, I took this photograph to the right from the window of my hotel. And in the background, you see Table Mountain. One thing you will know about Johannesburg as well as Cape Town, South Africa, 2 cities that you will visit on this trip, is that they are absolutely beautiful. But amidst that beauty is a startling contrast of poverty. As you can see in the left photograph, there's a woman who, and this was I took this photograph in 2019 in Cape Town, South Africa, outside of Langa Township. And that is one of the very impoverished townships in South Africa. But South Africa is number 1 of the top 15 countries with the widest wealth gap. And as is the case in the United States, that wealth gap is very rooted in race. Now, even though you will see poverty amid squalor, there will be some fun aspects of the trip. I pointed out to you in the background in the previous photo, a photo of Table Mountain. Table Mountain is one of the sort of attractions, recreational attractions in Cape Town, South Africa. As you can see here, the penguin colony. Every time I see photographs of the penguin colony in Cape Town, I can't help but smile because I tell you, it is just such a fun visit out at the penguin colony. I took these photographs last week when I was in Johannesburg, South Africa. And these photographs, I tell you, I had to restrain myself from embedding more photographs of this experience. But this is the cradle of humankind. And this is a cave where the human remains or skeletal remains of some of the first humans were found. And they did not live in this cave, but because of misfortune, they fell into the cave. And over thousands and thousands of years, some of the bone fragments can still be seen in the rock. But one of the skeletal remains that was found in this cave was of one of the youngest skeletal remains that we have found of the earliest humans. And so this is another fantastic trip. And you know, I should say this because I think for some people, this cave will look pretty spooky, and believe me, it really was, but it was absolutely fascinating. The top right-hand photograph is actually of a lake within the cave. But for those who may be a little squeamish, you don't have to go. Actually, there is a companion activity for people who may not want to go into the cave. So we could probably have 2 groups, those who go into the cave and those who don't, but you better believe that both will come out with a full understanding of the cradle of humankind. There are actually 3 countries that are known as sort of like the cradle of humankind, and they are in Ethiopia, South Africa, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Kenya, right. in the world. So this is absolutely fascinating. Some of the cities and townships that are included in this itinerary are Johannesburg, and Johannesburg sits to the east in South Africa. We will spend about 4 days in Johannesburg. And of course, a part of Johannesburg is the Soweto Township. And these are the townships that by law were created for Africans, Black Africans, and colored people and Indians. Pretoria is actually the capital of South Africa. We'll visit there and we will see, we will experience the quote unquote pilgrim story because as in the case in America, there is a pilgrim story in South Africa. We will compare and contrast the pilgrim story with the story of the indigenous people. Also, Cape Town, which is to the west and actually sits right on the border where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Indian Ocean. Again, absolutely breathtaking. Part of Cape Town is two townships that we'll visit, Langa Township and Khayelitsha Township, which has to be two of the, between Soweto, Langa, and Khayelitsha, some of the poorest communities on the face of the planet. A few trip highlights, again, the Soweto Township, the Apartheid Museum, the Mandela House, the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Center of Memory, Constitution Hill, which was actually a prison where both Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela, toward the beginning of his civil rights career, were in prison. The Hector Peterson Memorial, Union Buildings in Pretoria, the Voltrekker Monument, which is the sort of pilgrim experience of the Dutch who claimed or appropriated, I guess that would be the better term, the land. The US Consulate, the Cradle of Humankind, the Castle of Good Hope, Green Market Square. These are just some of the places we will visit. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott, and you can talk about application and scholarships.
All right, sounds good. I know some of you in here have already started your application. Some of you have completed your application. Some of you have not started your application. So I'm just going to kind of talk about this in general. So the application deadline is coming up on May 1st, which is this Sunday. So if you have not started or not actually submitted your application yet, please make sure to do it by the end of this weekend. It has to be by Sunday at midnight. You go to the DePaul Study Abroad website. You can just search for South Africa. You'll find it. It's very straightforward. There's just a brief application questionnaire that asks you a handful of questions that you have to respond to about why you want to do the program, what you think you're going to get from it, how it relates to your studies here at DePaul, your interests. So it's pretty straightforward. And then after the application has been submitted, Professor Johnson will be getting in touch with everybody who's applied to set up some brief interviews to get to know you a little bit better. These interviews are not anything to worry about. They're not like professional interviews. It's just going to be groups of you where you're going to chat for 20 minutes just to answer a few questions, just to get to know you a little bit. In terms of scholarships, there is no separate application if you want to be considered for scholarships. You'll be automatically considered for our special study abroad scholarship funding as long as you submit your application by May 1st. Now, there is a chance that we may extend the application deadline past May 1st for a couple of weeks if we still have a few spots left on the program, but we don't extend the deadline for scholarship consideration. So it's hugely important that if you want to be considered for scholarships, you have to submit your application by this Sunday, by May 1st. Now, in terms of scholarships, a couple of ways this works. We have some special funding for these Identities Abroad programs. And so any student who is a student of color, A first-generation student or a student with high financial need, and that's something that we work together with our financial aid office to determine, will automatically get a $1,500 scholarship towards the cost of this program. Automatic. Um, on top of that, everybody who applies, everybody will still be considered for our regular study abroad scholarship funding. And those scholarships range from usually on the low end, about $1,000 scholarship, up to some of them that we have reserved that could be almost the full cost of the program. So if you are somebody who got that $1,500 automatic scholarship, you could get an additional $1,000 on top of that, or even more than that, to cover even potentially more of the program, potentially the whole program cost. But again, you have to apply by May 1st for all of that.
And this, I tell you, this still gives me chill bumps. It was more than 2 years ago that I was contacted by the study abroad office and asked, hey, where else in the world would you like to teach your course on residential segregation? And of course, I said South Africa. That was the most immediate thing. But I tell you, to know that students could get from $1,500 to $2,500 and up to assist them in going to this program really, really warmed my soul, because I thought about my undergraduate experience. I never went on study abroad because I couldn't afford it. And so this is an opportunity. When you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to study abroad, to travel abroad, for people who may not ordinarily have the opportunity to do so. So I really hope that you all take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. Notification is in mid to late May about the application and scholarship. So,
And I can talk through the program cost here a little.
okay.
So yeah, so the way that it works, you have to pay the following to do this program. First, you pay the program fee, which is $39.90, so just under $4,000. And what that program fee includes is almost everything. It's your round trip airfare to and from Chicago to South Africa. It's your accommodations during the program. It is half to two-thirds of your meals, all your breakfasts, about a third of your lunches, and almost half of your dinners. It's all your course activities and excursions, your on-site transportation within the program. We also register you in international travel and health insurance, and then there's an administrative fee. Really what it doesn't include is just food and snacks outside of those meals, passport fees if you need to get a passport, any personal things that you do on your own. So it really includes almost everything for the program. And again, $39.90, but for those of you that get the $1,500 scholarship, that will automatically knock it down to $24.90. And then if you get additional scholarship funding on top of that, could knock it down even more. So our goal is to make this as affordable as we can so that nobody has to say they can't do this program because they can't afford it. On top of that, you also do have to pay tuition for those 6 credit hours that will be in your fall quarter. But that works just like regular classes. So as long as you don't go over 18 credit hours in the fall, there's no extra tuition. It's just part of your normal tuition costs that you would pay. If for some reason you have to overload and go over 18 credit hours, just like in any other quarter, if you went over 18 credit hours, you have to pay for those extra credits that you take. But you should plan on, if you get accepted to the program, leave space in your schedule. We are going to register you in the 6 credit hours for this. As long as you stay at 18 hours or less, the only cost you're going to have is that program fee. Does that make sense?
Okay.
All right. And then in terms of questions, we're going to take questions now, but our homepage has got all kinds of information about the program. You can contact Professor Johnson if for questions about sort of the course and what you're going to do. If you have questions about the application process, you can contact me. But what questions do you have? Please throw them out there.
Okay.
I have a
You can put them
question.
in the chat or
Sorry.
just mute, either whatever you'd like to do.
I have a question.
Yeah, Casey.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. So I'm a first year grad student here at DePaul, and I currently work at the Egan office, John Ziegler. And I was told about this program. I know he mentioned it a little bit before, like a few months ago, but we recently had a conversation about it yesterday more in depth. And he was telling me he wanted to Ms. Johnson and talk more about it, but I'm just a little concerned because I'm very interested in studying abroad, but being a grad student, my schedule does not call for that because my program is film and television with the concentration in cinematography. And so with me having to take 3 classes a quarter, I'll be having class during that time of the meeting. So I know he mentioned it to me because he said that he feels that it'll be, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Casey, when you said during the time of the meeting, do you mean during the class time on Tuesday?
Yes, yes, sorry,
Okay.
that's what I meant to say.
Now, Scott, can you please clarify? I know this is an undergraduate course.
Yeah, we have a lot of different study abroad programs that are options. This course is intended for undergraduates because it's part of this LSP 200. So at this time, we're not accepting graduate students in this course for this program, but we do have a lot of different programs that are open to graduate students, especially within CDM. We've got a number of these short-term programs that are open to both undergrad and grad students where you can get grad credit for it. So I would encourage you, take a look, talk to your advisor, come to our study abroad office, and we could actually have an appointment with you to kind of talk through the CDM offerings and what's there for graduate students that might work. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so that with that being said, I'll have to pass that message along to John because he didn't inform me that it was only for undergrads.
Gotcha.
And I didn't know that it was like a course that we had to take. He did not, I don't know if he was misinformed or not, or he just said it wrong, but yeah, I guess I have to tell him that because he's looking for more students to go from our office. But gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know all of the
all of the study abroad programs have a course attached to them. So you're always getting credit for them. So there's always coursework attached to the abroad experience. But yeah, please make an appointment with our office or contact me. We can set you up and kind of talk through the CDM offerings because there are some really great options for you as a grad student in CDM.
Got you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Asia, I saw your question. Asia, I saw your question.
Go ahead.
It's okay.
Asia, I saw your question in the chat. Mid to late May is when you probably will find out if you've been selected. Application deadline is May 1st, and then those first couple weeks of May is when Professor Johnson will be helping do the interviews and make the decisions on everybody. And then we'll let you know sort of probably in mid to late May. And at the time you get accepted, you'll find out very shortly thereafterward if you did get scholarship funding, and if so, how much. And then once you get accepted, you have a couple of weeks to let us know if you'd like to take that position in the spot or not. There's no obligation. But if you're still just thinking about this and not 100% sure, apply for the program. See if you get accepted. See if you get a scholarship. See how much it's for. If it ends up that you're not able to do it, you just say, you know what, I'm not able to do it. And you're not out anything. There's no like cost for that or anything like that. But once you do get accepted, we'll let you know very soon about the scholarship. You got a couple of weeks then to make your decision, and we go from there.
So yes. When we're making our class schedule, so should we register for this class? When we make
The way that study abroad works, you can't register yourself in the coursework for a study abroad course. We will actually register you for it. So if you have to register for classes before you find out about this, I would say register for classes, kind of assuming you don't get in potentially, just so you've got stuff as a backup. And then if you do get into the program, you can drop whatever else you registered for, and then we'll put you into these classes. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question. I took this class, and I know you mentioned those that have taken this class already. What would be the next steps if we're accepted into this program?
Yeah, and when you said take this class, you mean you've taken LSP 200 before?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had no idea that I took it, but yes.
Yeah, very easy. All that's going to mean is that we'll register you in a different section of the course where you'll get experiential learning credit instead. So you'll do everything the same. You're just going to be in a different course registration to get that experiential learning credit. Once everyone is accepted into the program, we'll send an email out that says, by default, you're going to be in LSP 200. But if you want the EL credit instead, let us know, and we'll make sure to register you appropriately.
Okay.
And so that's equivalent to your junior year experiential learning.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a senior, so seniors are able to apply for this.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so you'll be a student in the fall in December intersession, correct?
Yes,
right.
I will.
Okay. Okay,
Any other questions?
Sophia?
I just had a question about the credits. So like with the 2 credits that we get for the trip, does that count for our fall or for the winter quarter?
It's going to be fall quarter. All 6 credits will be registered in the fall. And those 2 extra credits are basically just go towards your elective credits.
Right, because generally you register for 16 hours, but it's the same price of registering for 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? You want to hear about how fantastic South Africa is?
That's why did you who did I hear? Oh, Asia.
The December dates that we will be gone, do you know those?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Great
Go ahead,
question.
Scott.
Let me bring it up here. Just
It's a
one-
November 29th through, what is it, December 8th?
Yeah, I've got it here. I think that's just, yeah,
I know it starts
November 28th through
Oh,
December 9th.
okay.
So all said and done, it's just under 2 weeks. So you have November 28th to December 9th. So you'll be able to have Thanksgiving, and then a couple days after Thanksgiving, you'll take off, and then you'll be back by kind of December 9th.
Any questions about travel requirements? As I mentioned last week, I returned from 10 days in Johannesburg, and you know, as was the case before I left the United States, there was a mandatory mask requirement, of course, in the airport, et cetera. That has been lifted in the United States, but I'm pretty sure it's probably continuing for international travel. You have to have proof, or at least I did. Who knows what will be the case in December, but I had to have proof of a negative COVID test going and coming. And I tell you, you're always on pins and needles for those tests because, you know, there is a such thing as being asymptomatic with COVID. So as I was preparing to leave Johannesburg, I was like, please, God, don't let me get a positive test and can't go back home.
And we'll
You
be in
know-
touch with all of that. I think so much may change between now and then. That
Yes.
we'll definitely be in touch over the summer and as fall comes of sort of what's the latest kind of updates on requirements and things like that.
And it was very safe. I felt very safe throughout the time I was in Johannesburg. You know, people were very respectful of you know, the mask mandate. Far more so than in the United States, I should say.
Asia had a question about how long is the flight. It's a pretty long flight. The way
Yeah.
that the flight is going, it's from O'Hare to Newark and then Newark straight to Johannesburg. And it is, yeah, Valerie, do you remember how long it was?
Well, every time I've gone to South Africa, I fly from Chicago to Amsterdam, which is 8 hours, and then Amsterdam to South Africa, which is 11 hours, a total of 19 hours. But we will be flying directly from the United States, Newark, New Jersey, you know, so it's that probably what, hour and a half ride to Newark.
Yeah, I'm looking
And
at it.
then all the way to South Africa. So it's a 19-hour total ride, and that's
Yeah,
not
I'm looking
including the layover.
That flight from Newark to Johannesburg is 22 hours, 7-hour time zone, so 15 hours. It's a 15-hour flight from Newark to Johannesburg. So it is a long flight. But
Yeah, and so yeah, that's not counting the layover, and then of course the flight from Chicago to Newark.
yeah, but you don't have to lay over in Europe or anything or anywhere else. It's, you know, once you get through Newark, it's straight landing in Johannesburg. Any other questions?
Sophia?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do have a question. So once we find out if we're accepted and then if we get any scholarships, the date we have to decide if we're going is by June 1st, you said?
It'll be about 2 weeks later. So when we accept you, we give you about 2 weeks to make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I was just wondering if there were any, other than like the COVID vaccine, is there any like vaccines or shots that we need to take before we go?
No, and there is no visa requirement as long as you have your up-to-date passport. And one thing you should always keep in mind is that, you know, you don't want to travel within the period, how do I say this? If your passport expires within 6 months of when you're due to travel, you may run into a problem. So make sure you have more than 6 months from the time of your trip on your passport.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you can always do in terms of vaccinations, the best thing to do is to go to the CDC website. For every country, there is on the CDC website a whole country site that talks about vaccinations and talks through recommended ones you might want to think about. And that's something where you can talk with your doctor, or there are special like vaccination clinics that can talk to you about sort of what they would recommend or not. But there are I don't think there are any required vaccinations for South Africa, but definitely some recommended ones that I think a lot of people probably have had already, but some others that maybe if you haven't had, you might want to look into, but it's all listed on the CDC website.
And then for international travel, I guess we should mention, obviously, COVID, but all students at DePaul, I think, are already vaccinated for COVID.
Yeah, and at this time, it is a requirement that to do a study abroad program, you need to be fully vaccinated and boosted. We're not sure how this will look for December, but currently that is the case. And that means that if you have gotten a university exemption, a medical or religious exemption, that does not necessarily apply to study abroad. So if you do have one of those exemptions, that may not work for study abroad. There's a lot we need to think about in terms of keeping the group safe, local requirements in country, how quickly things can change. So if you do have an exemption, that's something where you may need to get vaccinated and boosted at this time. That is the policy. The good news is you've got a long time before December, so there's a lot of time to do that if you haven't, or if you've gotten vaccinated but not boosted, or so there's plenty of time. But that is the plan at this point until something changes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right.
Is there anything you recommend we should learn or do before getting to South Africa? Like any phrases or any like anything that would like enhance the experience, I guess.
So unlike some places abroad that I have been, most people speak English. South Africans, they speak a variety of languages. My driver last week, he spoke 9, but it's a very English proficient country, and so you don't have to worry. You might want to learn my new name that some women in Soweto gave me, and that is Mandlagazi, which means strong woman.
Well named. Well named. I will say this, in the class that you do on the Tuesday nights, all fall before you go, there's going to be a second person leading the program that we're still in the process of choosing. That's called a staff professional, and they're going to work together with Professor Johnson to lead the group abroad in December. And they will also be teaching some little components of the class that are going to be preparing you for the trip. Health and safety, travel strategies, packing, cultural things, thinking about diversity, what it means to be an American traveling abroad, all of those sort of things about identity. So there's going to be a lot of that woven into the class throughout the fall as well to help prepare you.
Yes, health and safety, that is definitely number one. As I always say, we go together and we come back together, right? We are a unit, a team. We are like Team DePaul while we're away.
Asia put in the chat, will there be opportunities to interview local business people or maybe government employees?
Yes, actually, that is one of the things that I've decided. And at this point, my challenge is what to, we can't do every single thing that I would like for us to do. But one of the things that I've kind of added as a result of this Johannesburg trip is a meeting with the US consulate. They have agreed to talk to students about careers in the foreign exchange and also about US policy in South Africa. So the US consulate would be a definite stop. And there's a US consulate in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. So I don't know which part of the trip will do that, but one of them.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. If you have individual questions as well, please feel free to reach out to either of us. For those who have not finished their application yet, please get that in the next few days, and we'll go from there. So
And
thank you so
please
much,
tell,
everyone.
please tell your friends about this course. You know, the limit is 20. Prior to the pandemic, I had an embarrassment of riches. I had 40 students who wanted to go, and I had to narrow it down to 20. And so it would be great if we could have a robust group of 20 students.
Spread the word, and yeah, we love to look forward to seeing your application.
And remember that May 1st deadline, particularly about the scholarships. You can apply afterwards, but you said for sure, Scott, that the deadline for financial aid cannot extend beyond
Yep,
May
you have
1st?
to apply by May 1st. And we may not extend, if we have enough applications by May 1st, we will close it. But if we still have some spots potentially available, we sometimes extend for a couple of weeks, but that doesn't include scholarships. So you have to apply by this weekend to be eligible for the scholarships.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay.
Have a
And
great
if you
rest
all
of
have further questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. Okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
So
Thank
Scott,
you.
Scott, you wanna say